Sorry, I'm gonna have to move this tiny bit here. All right. You know, it's funny, I was uploading some videos to YouTube, the ones that I made, mostly here on Facebook. And so I'd hear the first few seconds, and I swear to God, 90% of them started me with saying, okay, like, okay, this time I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. So I made sure to not do it this time. Anyway, okay. This is the first Inktober piece that I'm gonna do. And I sort of retrofitted all the things I wanted to do to the prompts. I've never really used the prompts before, but I figured this time, why don't I try to do that? And I wanted to do actors in what I thought were either their best or most well-known roles for the most part. So I just basically chose a bunch of random people and films that I liked to do Inktober. And this is, the first one is supposed to be Ring. So what we have are two 5-finger rings, yo, right here, that Radio Raheem had on his fists in Do the Right Thing. And so I'm going to paint this. I hadn't really decided on a visual conceit or theme or whatever you want to call it, but I remembered that his palette is pretty saturated in that film. So I might try and do that with this, which kind of, you know, it fits in with what I do normally, so I don't really have to do that much. Get a little test board here. And then I'm going to start laying in a layer of the basic flesh tones. And then we'll go from there. Looks like it says I have 9 people watching at the moment, which is pretty good considering, I mean, half the time, you know, I'm lucky if I can get 2 or 3 people at one time. So, let's get started. And as usual, feel free to ask any questions you might have, and if I see them, and if I can think and answer, then I will. Sometimes they go by me on the phone here. It's pretty close to my face. And I miss it, but I will be looking as often as I can. So right now I just have a mixture of red and sepia for this basic flesh tone here. Hey Joey, thanks for coming by. Now I'll go to a smaller brush, get some of these smaller areas here. Recently someone was trying to be helpful and give me some advice on how to get more viewers on YouTube, for example. And one thing they told me about, which I had no clue, was there's this one tag that a lot of people use that I guess sort of originated with Bob Ross, and I think has something to do with his sort of quiet way of talking and going through his videos. I think it was ASMR. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if what it's short for. Right now it's short for shut the hell up, dogs, but I guess the person thought, that dog. Anyway, it must be short for something that has to do with maybe Bob Ross's quiet way of speaking, and they thought that I had, I guess, some of the same kind of gestalt going on. So they said, oh, this should automatically get you a lot more viewers to your channel. Whether that's happened, I don't know. I mean, I also made a little post or two on Facebook saying it'd be nice if I had more people, blah, blah, blah. And so some people went ahead and were nice enough to go subscribe, which of course you can still do. All right, so I got the basic, just the basic. Now I think I'm gonna add a little bit more red to this mixture so I can have an even warmer color here that I'm going to start adding. And this is, by the way, FW ink on cold press illustration board, for those of you that care, for all three of you. And for the 1 in 100 people that care what I listen to, or are as into music while they play as I am, I've got a bunch of CDs. Hey Sarah, I've got a bunch of CDs in the old CD changer, and right now it's Bruce Coburn. Can't tell if this brush picks up little bits of junk from the illustration board, or if the brush just, basically is self-destructing. Is that what it refers to, Sarah? The sound of the brush on the board, ASMR? I figured it had to be some sort of acronym that had something to do with Bob Ross in particular. And I do have all the reference that I need, and all the plans are in place for all the rest of the Inktober ones that I'm going to do. So I don't know, there's no need to make any requests or anything, because I do have it all hammered out. And some of them will be relatively simple. I mean, this one is probably somewhere in the middle as far as just being a portrait, or incorporating other elements from the roll, the film, any kind of visuals, etc. Some of them are a little bit more involved than others. And so what I do with this ink usually is lay down a color like I'm doing now. And since I tend to have a need to soften edges and stuff, a lot of times I clean the brush out and then just soften the edges of whatever I laid down with some water around the edges. And I'm sorry, the phone/camera might shake a tiny bit now and then because if it's hooked up to an arm that's hooked up to the table that my paper is laying on. Oh, okay. So, Sarah, does ASMR actually mean anything? Is it short for something? Or is it just some made-up term that's come to be associated with Bob Ross or people that talk quietly while they paint? Inquiring minds want to know. Or as Tom Waits says, we have a right to know. Oh, so you don't know. You looked it up. Well, what good are you? I thought you had the inside scoop. And now I'm listening to Death Cab for Cutie, which I found out, I don't know, years ago. I have a relative that is the manager. I assume still the manager, although the band is not super active. Okay, now I'm gonna probably just go in with regular sepia with a small brush again. Get some of these darker areas more established. Justin, that's what I'm doing now. This is the first Inktober. Where have you been, man? Do you not have your notifications set to Ken Meyer Jr. whatever? God, you people gotta stay clued in. Anyway, yeah, this is the first one. And I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have plans. I have everything I need to continue the theme, which this year is some of my favorite actors and movies and roles that they might be most known for, or at least in my opinion. This is not any kind of authority. This is just me and some actors and stuff that I like. Justin, boy, I'm going to revoke your membership in the Ken Meyer Jr. Super Duper Fan Club. Then it'll be down to 3 members. Hey, someone feel free to find Spike Lee on Twitter and tag him and tell him someone's painting his mug. Oh, I missed someone's comment. But anything I miss, I will see when I'm done with the video and I go look at the comments. So if I miss anyone's question or comment or something, then I will probably remark on it later. Don't be offended if I don't do it right away. I mean, as in while I'm painting here. Hope everybody's having a super duper Tuesday. Right now I'm listening to Lori Carson, with her teeny tiny voice. Need a little bit more ink. A little sepia mixed with a little red. Still not dark enough in this area, or saturated enough either. And now it's this really cool album by Greg Dooley from the Afghan Whigs and Mark Lanigan, called the Gutter Twins, or they call themselves the Gutter Twins. I think this album is called Saturnalia. I might break into little bits of whistling here and there, so be warned. I may even very quietly sing along, but we'll see. I might make pseudo guitar sounds, do some lame beatboxing. You never know. Oh, down to 2 people. They've gotten tired of me. Too much lame talking. Or their lunch breaks were over. But anybody that is here or comes and goes, please feel free to announce yourself. Don't be shy. I'm never been a fan of public speaking, and if I'm here doing this, then you can say hello, for Christ's sake. Come on, come on. And of course, it's always appreciated when and if you share this thing so more people can see it than might otherwise. Oh, someone was talking about Prismacolor markers. Oh, I missed who that was. I'm sorry. All right. Time to mix a little indigo with sepia to get some of these areas, really dark areas, dark enough so I can contrast and get everything the correct value. And these Inktober pieces that I'm doing, they're not meant to be big, huge productions. Some of them end up becoming that for whatever reason, but I try and have them be relatively simple, relatively quick, and have them just be sort of fun exercises, you know. It doesn't always go that way, but that is the way they should be. Oh, happy Inktober to you too, Sarah. Thanks for coming by. Don't make me come down there and make you guys announce yourself. ideally, when I do these, I feel like they should not take much more than an hour. That's how much time I should be devoting to these. But you know, a lot of times, especially when you're doing them in the public eye like this, and they're going to be shown later, the vanity seeps in and makes me want to make them as good as possible when I should just be satisfied with what I've decided is the allotted correct time and effort. Oh, someone said hi. Hey Frank, thanks for announcing yourself. You brave boy. All right. Some people are finally taking it to heart. Now, granted, it's very possible you could be older than me, so don't be offended. You're welcome, Frank. I don't know what I did to warrant to thank you, but you're welcome. Ooh, and now it's the new bat for lashes. Cool. Sarah, in my case, the way I use these, yeah, watercolor and these inks have a lot in common because I sort of basically treat them like watercolor. But as you probably know, the difference with these acrylic inks is once they're dry, you can't mess them up. You can't alter other than painting on top. And maybe changing things by painting on top. You can't disturb what you've already painted. So that's mainly a good thing, I think, for me anyway. I like that aspect of it. But as far as the application, it's a lot like watercolor. But the surface, I mean, in this case, it's illustration board, or technically they're calling this watercolor board. So this would be the same whether it was watercolor or ink. I would just start painting, as opposed to if I was on watercolor paper, you know, having to stretch it unless it was really thick, like 300-pound paper. Then you wouldn't have to. Haven't decided how I'm going to handle these fists and rings, but I'm about to get there. I'm about to have to decide pretty quick. Yeah, well, Sarah, feel free to send me a message with it or whatever, and I'll check it out. I haven't really used markers a ton as far as finished pieces. I mean, at conventions and stuff, then I've done a fair amount of them. But as far as doing something, like I couldn't do what, let me think, what's his name? It's probably going to come to me later when I'm not trying to think of it. But there's a comic artist that posts a lot on Facebook, and he uses markers and gets these just really nuanced, beautiful, full color paintings, basically, using Copic markers. Someone will probably think of his name, and then I'll go, oh Christ, that's right, exactly. That's what I was trying to remember. I can see some of his art in the back of my head. Oh, no, Frank. See this? That's my reference. There's no way I could freehand a really, really good likeness. And I think there's very, very few people that could, because, I mean, you would have to really know your subject matter incredibly well to just freehand a likeness. I mean, it's freehand in that I didn't trace anything. I did, draw the image by looking at the photograph as opposed to tracing it. But I have used that method before. I'm not going to try to come off all high and mighty and say that I've always only ever drawn and not traced, but there's a homemade tracing paper method that I actually use and teach in this ink painting class that I teach at this local community college, because the way I look at it is the class is a painting class. It's not a drawing class. If you want to learn drawing, then you take a drawing class, or the class would have to be a lot longer, because drawing is a whole other long learning process. Oh, Katie, you're here? Well, hello, Katie Jardine. Feel free to say something, Home Slice. No, Sarah, I live in Southern California. I live in Santa Ana, California, and this college is Santiago Canyon College, and technically it's in Orange, California. I mean, I've been up to your area, but I don't live there. Okay, at least as far as getting the basics here, I'm pretty much ready to get those hands and rings done, and then I can sort of hopefully unify everything. Yeah, there are a lot of magic artists up there, and that's where the game originated, so that's where they got a lot of their early artists, was the Seattle area. Okay. So now, let's see if I can pull off the 5-finger rings, or technically 4-finger rings, that good old Radio Raheem is wearing while he blasts his public enemy. tomorrow I will be painting Vincent D'Onofrio's character from Full Metal Jacket. And the dogs must really like that subject because they're barking again. Oh, someone's delivering some mail. I'll be right back. Thank you. Shut up, dog. Shut up, dude. Yeah, I think I got a nice fanzine in the mail from Doug Hazelwood. Far freaking out, man. More gist for the Ink Stains Mill. I can't remember what I bought from him off the top of my head. I'm listening now. There's an album by Peter Gabriel. What's it called? I don't know. There are two albums, and the names are slightly changed to reflect the content because one is people covering Peter Gabriel, and one is Peter Gabriel covering other people. And I really like Peter Gabriel a ton, but in my opinion, I don't know if it's age, just what he feels like doing, but everything is so slow and quiet. And I remember after he left Genesis, his first, I guess probably 3.5, 4 solo albums, they were all really cool because they all had a ton of variety. And they were not what you would expect from the guy who just left Genesis. But as he went on, probably started with the Us album, things just started to get quieter and slower and felt a little bit too much of the same thing. And this album is the epitome of that. So I never thought I would say this, but sometimes I fast forward past a Peter Gabriel song. And they're not bad songs by any means, but it just all feels too much the same. But that's just my opinion. What do I know? All right, getting these rings firmed up. Now I'll start doing the hands here. Feel free to weigh in with your own opinion, folks. There are 5 of you there, supposedly. And I know it can't be that you're just so enthralled with the painting process. other one basically done. Uh-oh, down to 3. Oops, sorry. Be still, camera, be still. Oh, someone said something. Frank said, why would one choose them over watercolors? What are the advantages of inks over watercolors? Well, thank you for that question, Frank. Let me expound, as if I know something. For me, I started using these inks after I had seen some of the work that Charles Vess was doing with them, and it ended up that the methods that I use are somewhat different from his, because he will do, and I think the reason why he might like them is he can do layer upon layer upon layer of very transparent layers until he gets the exact shade and value that he wants. I tend to be more trying to get the color what I want the first time and laying it down. I mean, I tend to end up stuck in what I like between someone like him, who does these really soft blends over time, like someone like now my memory is so terrible. Now I'm trying to remember the name of the really well-known American artist, oil mainly, who, and it'll come to me in a second, who did a lot of landscapes, incredibly detailed landscapes, and he did this incredibly involved layering process, like sometimes 100 layers of glazes, you know, to get what he wanted. And Charles Vess does sort of a similar thing, with these inks, I tended to start to use them because number one, they allow for a lot of fixing, you know, because if you use watercolors, you can go over things to some degree again and again, but you have to be very careful not to disturb what you've already done, or you'll end up with a muddy mess. And although I could be wrong, it might be just in my application, to me it does feel like these inks are more saturated in color, and I tend to like that and work that way naturally. So it's another reason why I like them. So, you know, they have their advantages over watercolors, and it just depends on the user, really, whether they really see them as advantages or, you know, not. Did that make sense? Feel free to let me know if I was spouting gibberish or not. And I also like the way that they interact with each other. When you're working really wet into wet, you can get some interesting textures as the colors flow into each other, depending on the color. No problem. If you want to see someone, like I say, who really uses these inks, you know, really with amazing results, then go look at Charles Vess's stuff. And I had used ink even before I realized what Charles Vess did with them, but it was just a really minuscule amount on any given piece. Like I did a big painting of Jeff Buckley years ago, and I used the ink to do a few effects, a few opaque things that I didn't feel like I could do with watercolor. And I don't know if I really knew what I was doing. But it worked fine for those purposes, but I didn't use them anywhere near as much as I do now. I use them a lot now. Oh, okay. Yeah, Justin, don't let me interrupt your workflow. Don't let me bully you into talking. Now I'm listening to Glenn Campbell and one of his newer releases. If you're curious, you should go check out Ghost on the Canvas, one of Glenn Campbell's more recent albums. He did one after that where he covered a lot of modern artists, and that was really good too, but Ghost on the Canvas has a lot of his own really good songs. Oh, someone said take care. Maybe someone had to leave. Might have been Frank. Have a good one. Thanks for coming by. Oh, low battery. Okay. Guess I'm going to have to hook up the power so I don't run out of power. Give me 1 second here so I can plug this in. It's amazing how much power this eats up. That's still not really long enough. I thought that was going to be long enough. All right, hold on. Oh, I know what I had to do. That's right. I need to get my extension cord. All right. Stay there. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Got the extension cord. Just get it all situated here. It's not the most high-tech operation in the world, believe me. Okay. Get that out of the way, then I get back to what I was doing. Still have 2 people. All right, they stuck around. So what's next? Alright, so I think what I'm going to do now is use a flat brush, and I'm just going to add some color, some saturated color here, maybe to sort of echo the palette of Do the Right Thing. I want it to be somewhat dry brush. Camera's going to get in the way. Have to make my brush move around the camera. And then I also want a little bit of something here so I can establish the highlight that will hopefully define the side of his head there. And then it's one of those times when I have to decide, am I done, more or less, other than adding a few highlights and stuff. And now I'm listening to the wonderful Feist. All right, so now I'm going to go in and add a few little highlights, reestablish a few little things here and there. I'm not running away. One little disadvantage about ink is, unlike watercolor, it's harder to erase your pencil lines that show through. With watercolor, the lead sort of, I guess it sort of floats on top, but the ink covers that more, so sometimes you can't erase pencil lines if you want to. Every once in a while I'll just, you know, paint over those lines with white if I really feel like they look too dirty. Another disadvantage to ink, acrylic ink, is because it's acrylic ink, it can sort of gum up your brushes to some degree, even though it's, you know, more or less the consistency of watercolor. So you gotta pay attention to your brushes. And I don't pay enough of good attention to some of these brushes. They're cheap to begin with, to be honest. So they eventually end up having to be replaced and sent to the brush graveyard, where they're used for weird little effects here and there. Okay, I should quit this. I can't quit you. I should quit it soon, so I can hold to my intention of not spending too much time on these. Besides, there's one person watching. I must finish. Okay, I'm going to call this sucker done. For the one person that's still here, thanks for watching, and everybody else that came by, I appreciate you sharing, etc. I will scan this pretty soon because it dries really fast, and then post it and post the video with it. So I will probably see you guys again tomorrow. Bye bye.